Legend tells of two kingdoms who shared the same land, separated not by distance, but time. Both took a very similar form. Jovial characters, a colourful cast, 20-odd faces, having a blast. For a while, this was bliss, a place for respite. But this land was cursed, and soon came the blight. A lust for power proceeded to prosper. Those who were hexed held hell in their hands and used its strength to divide and command. At the bottom were low tiers, too weak to fight back. It wasn't that long till they gave up their attack. Those just above them fared a bit better, and some even saw slight success. But it wouldn't take long for those in the middle to be round up and end off repressed. This left the handful of high tiers to fight off their colossus, a knight from the sky and a fox from the stars, both consumed by a lust to conquer had torn through their cohorts, and with one final bout they'd soon have what they'd wanted. In their victory, they claimed the crown, a symbol of being the best. They were the king of their castles. However, a king without a kingdom is merely a man on the throne of decay. Their quest for control had left the kingdom crumbling and abandoned, the rubble left behind becoming the seedbed that would allow the land to claim its next victim. However, this fable is only part true. While it is the case that there was power between two, one was a tyrant and the other was firm, for the fox was a force who held the kingdom together, not fairly perhaps, but certainly stable. His kingdom is still growing, slowly but surely, so perhaps there's more to this mistold story. And then they built 2 more castles, and the powers that be kept smiting down anyone living in Brawl's remains. And sometimes they hit melee. Let's be real for a second. Somebody has to be the king of the castle. In any game that's even slightly asymmetrical, something will come out on top. Maybe it's these guys, or them. Maybe even this bird will be the first character to get banned, despite the fact that Kakuin's better. Love him or hate him, royalty is here to stay. And personally, I think they should be fed to the guillotine. But enough about the British monarchy. This is a two-way relationship though. If the people want to play a game, then they need a king. But if their king ends up being enough of a nuisance to push people away, then the game stops being played in the first place. If you'll follow my thought trail then, one of the things that keeps a game alive, especially those that aren't patched anymore, is a good king or queen. But what does it mean to be a good monarch? Is it balance? Etiquette? Using 37 million of the taxpayers' money to renovate your house? While it's hard to pinpoint any one thing, Fox in Melee and Meta Knight in Brawl are two sides of the same coin that comes from the top tier treasury, and yet between them they manage to spin two very different histories. These two characters share a lot of similarities. They exist in the same series, can both be aggressive characters, and are both understood from outside observers to be infamously top tier. However, the differences come in what these characters did and have been doing to their game throughout their lifespan. Fox is memed to hell and back. This image wouldn't exist and be many people's understanding of competitive Melee if there wasn't some element of truth to it. But ultimately, he keeps his game extremely healthy, and in many ways to me is the perfect top tier you could ask for. Meta Knight on the other hand flies a little under the radar. People know that he's broken, but he doesn't have the same legacy that Fox has, specifically because his game died. Maybe there's still some people who play on Discord, I get it, but I don't care. And Brawl died for many reasons, so let's get this out of the way quickly. Brawl isn't dead because of this. Tripping is a random mechanic that can occur at the start of a run that puts your character in knockdown. It's very dumb and extremely bad for the competitive state of Brawl by encouraging players to engage defensively, because running always has a chance of putting you in a literal disadvantage rather than the conceptual risk that is approaching. It makes the game slow, stiff, and defensive. However, people over-exaggerate how detrimental this mechanic is, and it would be more accurate to say that it's a straw man for the many other systems that slowed down Brawl's pace. A pace that both Meta Knight and Fox were destined to fight against. From their inception, both of these characters were set to speed up the pace of their game, being the vessel that allowed players to capitalize on every mistake and push forward with even the most minuscule of advantages. Regardless of the opponent, regardless of the circumstance, speed was their motive by any means necessary. They'd do this by upholding the 5 aggressive commandments. You must be swift, Well, that's a yes. Calm down, fellas.
You must maintain the tools to keep your opponent in your bite.
Certainly true. Hey, put him down. He's had enough.
You should keep your foe guessing at all times.
It's a work in progress.
You must be firm, but fair.
But are you listening?
And most important of all, come hell or high water, you will not seek to slow the gears of progress.
Where'd they go? And with those commandments mostly bestowed upon them, they set forth to maintain and build speed in their respective kingdoms. On the surface, they seem to do this in very similar ways. Fox used his mobility to duck and dive his way through the opponent's pressure and blast through any defenses. This kept the opponent guessing. A well-played defense wasn't just big hitboxes. This video isn't about you, go away. And strong projectiles, it required timing, precision, and a feel for the Fox. Meta Knight didn't always dodge and weave, but his fast ground speed and 5 jumps let him stick to you no matter how hard you tried to run. Once he was stuck, he had everything he needed to take you down. Pretty decent grabs, the excellent tornado, this up air, oh, that might be a little too good. Basically, every button was perfectly set up to knock you back just far enough to put Meta Knight in a position where he was able to take control of the stage and punish you for trying to take control back. Fox is very much the same. Grab game, godlike. Combo game, goated. This down B, whoa. That might be a little too good. When these characters were controlled by the inexperienced, they functioned completely as intended, and to some extent, they weren't even the best. In the budding landscapes, characters like Sheik and Marth in Melee or DDD in Brawl had an incredible initial punch. Tools that were simple to use and exploit made them more dominant in an uninformed landscape. But that environment is temporary, and as experience bored down the mines of understanding, it would only be a matter of time before these two initial impressions would fade, uncovering who they really were. As the days drew on, Fox remained a bit more of the same. His combo game got more complex, and the power of his movement became more pronounced as he upheld the commandments for the most part. Meta Knight, on the other hand, was quickly revealing some ulterior traits. The strength of his tools was decisive, but how he could use those to achieve victory was divisive. Something you've got to understand about what Meta Knight would eventually become is that he was still bound by the laws of his game, and I don't mean that from this fable-esque perspective. When it comes to games, there are laws that govern how the experience works. It doesn't matter how hard I want Fox up smash to do 150 by itself, the laws of the game means that it will only ever do 24 at most. Meta Knight might have had all the tools to be aggressive, but the laws that aggression was surrounded by meant his intended method to push advantage was extremely limited. That up air, really good. Like, really good. But not for the reasons it was supposed to be. It should be a combo tool, repeating into itself to keep the damage going. And against a select few fast fallers, that is what it does, but that's the exception to the norm. Thanks to air dodge being instant and letting you move through your opponent as you do so, if the opponent got out of hit stun fast enough, they could air dodge through most follow-ups. This if, though, was more frequently a when that came almost instantly. Brawl's knockback model pushed you a large initial distance only to have you quickly lose that momentum, giving your opponent control of their character before a true combo was normally possible. As such, up air more frequently found use to cover platforms, to hit and reset in the character's favor, more than to press forward and close out a stock. This was just part one of many problems Meta Knight's design would run up against. Shields were incredibly strong, and even the best movement was stiff. The laws of the world didn't favor what this character was designed to do, but what Meta Knight had didn't need any of that. In all his strengths, he was overtuned, excessively mobile, and unreasonably strong. So when he was denied the option to push, it would become the opportunity to repress. For example, up air is fast, large, and massively disjointed. The perfect tool to wall someone from below. Now, on a lot of characters, being able to wall someone above you is only useful in combo situations and shocking. It might be possible to control the space of a platform, especially great when tech chasing, but it wouldn't have any application, say, off stage. Gravity drags you down, and with only one mid-air jump, you're banking a lot on a predictable option even if it briefly gives you some space. But what if you had 5? Suddenly, walling from below the stage, especially when you have invincibility every time you grab the ledge, becomes a very viable time-wasting strategy, or at the very least becomes a way to force your opponent to give you the ledge. The aggressive properties, the speed of the attack, and the disjoint to make sure that it doesn't trade, it was all bent and twisted to make for a defensive nightmare as people struggled to approach or force the Meta Knight back to the stage. Without even doing any damage, Meta Knight would take over control of the match, not by keeping the opponent guessing, but by keeping the opponent waiting. Regardless of where you looked, this was a constant of the character. The mixing of hypermobility with strong normals unintentionally melding to create nearly unstoppable situations. Retreating fair causing a temporary no man's land. Tornado was so mobile that if it failed or succeeded to hit, you could retreat to safety. Shuttle Loop let you reset positioning with enough safety that it was impossible to use his own defensive strategies to back him into a corner. Not that that would help to begin with, because again, none of these tools were being used how they were supposed to. In many cases, it wasn't even possible to. This made Meta Knight this almost immovable wall, placing down tilts, fairs, and dares just outside of your comfort zone, but rarely getting the opportunity to push forward with them. The sheer power of these tools was immense, but the best ways to apply them meant that Meta Knight's fastest path to victory was commonly the slowest method. This was brought to the forefront of the meta by players like Mewtwo, who was a powerhouse of the game, bleeding out the timer and maximizing the potential of the character's hit and run playstyle. So even if some players like Shadow were attempting to play as quickly as possible, they'd be outshone by the more defensive, even campy style of the character. Meanwhile, Fox was advancing in an entirely different direction. He was leaning towards his intended design, but it wasn't because Fox was a better designed character. The laws of the land let Fox thrive. Thanks to these 3 core options, every character had the potential to be fast, but those with a good dash dance and fall speed could really push the movement to the limit. For Fox, this meant his high base mobility let him have layers to his maneuvers, with that universal movement also allowing other characters to compete and race alongside him. With everyone gradually expanding their potential movement, what Fox's version of fast was could only grow as the players who invested the most time into the character pushed the limit on what was possible for him, a skill that would slowly become a requirement as the days drudged on. Fox has strong tools, without a doubt. There's only a fringe set of attacks in his kit that aren't very good, and depending on the player's skill level, even that's debatable. But he's not a Samus, or a Peach. Characters that in themselves have high skill ceilings, but low skill floors thanks to a couple of powerhouse attacks letting them make for simple and effective strategies. Instead, Fox has to lean into his mobility. Nair, drill, and dash attack are strong moves, but they have to be paired with his mobility to really be effective. Throw out any of these with the wrong placement or the wrong height, and you're effectively throwing a free opportunity for your opponent to bite back. While there is some disjoint on these moves, it isn't anything that would let you wall out for an excessive amount of time, encouraging you to dive in. This is a theme in Fox's toolset. These moves are extremely strong, but they're not efficient walls. That's not to say that defensive Foxes don't come around occasionally, especially in the right matchups, but the way the moves are strong drives most people towards more aggressive play. They pop you up at just the right angle for follow-ups when you're pressing forward, but lose a lot of their oomph when you're retreating with them. So the Fox that gets the most mileage out of their tool sets are often the ones that use the tools with their mobility to dodge and weave and press forward. This combination of the laws of the world and the strengths of the character would have been enough to uphold the first 3 commandments, but there was one more thing that would push Fox from good to greatness. This move would become iconic. Not only for Fox, but for Melee as a whole. Beneath its simple exterior was a weapon so powerful it would tear through the cast for years to come, and mold Fox to be a creature of bane. Frame 1 activation and being jump cancelable made this move very, very strong. So much so that we're running out of the pages to give this part of the story proper nuance. So understand that the properties here only scratch the surface of what this move allows Fox to do. While it might not have an immediate power like Samus's charge shot, it's the speed that it comes out with the versatility that comes from the jump cancel that allows Fox to barrel through characters in a way that very few others can. This character can run at you, and if the shine lands or is blocked, Fox can take the cancel properties to spin this into a combo or something that leads to a combo. Literal advantage is constantly on the tip of his fingers given the right distance, but the cancel properties also allow him to use this move passively to create space. His movement and more conventional attacks combined with shine let him always be just one right move away from putting the opponent's stock to an end. He just needs to know when to pull the trigger. As a result, for the opponent, you are constantly on your toes. You need to be at the top of your game and actively looking to call him out at every possible opportunity. Because if you're waiting around for him to give you an inch, he's got everything he needs to take a mile. With this, he doesn't just uphold the first 3 commandments, he emblazons them into every single match he's in. He held everything he needed to push through and force situations on his opponent at every opportunity. And if that was all he did, the story would end here. Meta Knight rejected the role he was given and Fox accepted it. A simple tale of order versus chaos. But it's really the last 2 commandments that are the most important. While this might seem like a story of kings, it's really a tale of the people. And it's these last 2 points that are vital for keeping the people involved. If a character is unfair, the people are going to end up frustrated, even if they're not the best. Wobbling, Ice Climber's extremely simple infinite, was banned for this exact reason. Yes, it might have given a character who wasn't the strongest an opportunity to tango with the best, but the lack of effort required for Ices to kill made the game frustrating. It wasn't fun, and even if they didn't win, wobbling would drive players away from the game due to how unfair it was. As a result, for the health of the kingdom, wobbling was banned. Ices suffered for it at first, but for everyone, including Ices, the effect that it had on people's morale to play the game was undoubtedly positive. Fairness is an important element of the game, but being the king is inherently unfair. You are stronger than those around you, so in some respect both of these characters have already failed. Talk to any Melee player or ex-Brawl head and they will have a massive list of complaints about the character. This is just what happens when you invest hundreds to thousands of hours into a game. However, it's the types of complaints that these characters generate that's most important. Fox's main complaints mostly revolve around what he does. The precious shine creates, the way that he can track you down, the fact that he has no obvious weaknesses relative to other characters, requiring you to have an in-depth knowledge of split-second scenarios to get the upper hand. It's not that he stops you from playing the game, it's that when he's played right, the game revolves around him. Meta Knight, though, has much more intrusive problems. It goes beyond having to respect him at all times. This character never lets you play your game. In some ways that's obvious, camping under the ledge and flying under the stage, but even when not actively insidious, you are still at the whim of Meta Knight. You're losing in neutral the whole time thanks to the disjoint of his attacks and unparalleled control that he has over the stage, clinging to any opportunity to get a hit, and then when you finally get it, nothing. You're almost never rewarded for your hits. The laws that are holding back Meta Knight are also holding back everyone else. So with every opening, you are getting 1 or 2 single touches, only to then return to a scenario where you're losing neutral again. Unless you're a character with chain grabs, you're fighting for stray hits the whole match, with each progressive hit only dragging out how long it takes for the next interaction to occur. Meta Knight's absurd aerial mobility between jumps, flight, shuttle loop, dimensional cape, and if all else failed, a hitbox the size of Skyrim forced you to respect him on the way back. As the percent climbed, this meant having to wait longer and longer for you to get your opportunity to strike back, since trying to pressure him off stage is effectively a death sentence. This unfortunate reality meant that even the most aggressive, fastest, machine gun Meta Knights would still bring down the pace of the match, because once you started to win against him, your only option was to wait for him to give you the chance to fight back. You, while playing against Meta Knight, are constantly having to play his game, because his tools are just too strong to enforce your own game plan. But even when you're playing well against him, the tables never truly turn. And even if he wasn't the best, waiting for someone to give you the chance to win, even if guaranteed, isn't an enjoyable experience. That's one of the things that makes Fox fun to play against for a lot of players. He's hard as hell in the neutral, but once you finally find your opening or exploit one of the Fox's poorly thought out approaches, he is the perfect weight and force speed that makes him a combo feast as the opponent. Against Fox, the tables can flip incredibly hard, and while you have to fight for every opportunity, you can find circumstances to play your game with a pace and ferocity that Fox had the whole time. This, in my opinion, is one of the things that keeps Fox so electric after all these decades that Melee has been around. He's a powerhouse in almost every sense, but the vulnerability that he has in his combo potential not only lets other characters still have their opportunity to shine, but also encourages everyone to improve their game. Work for that extra little percent, search for slight improvements in timing, find that opportunity to play your game, because if the beast bleeds, we can kill it. Melee has the reputation of being this lightning fast game, not because it's intrinsically fast. I've seen enough floaty matchups go the full 8 miles to know that, even if it hurts to admit. But Fox, as the staple, as the king, was just vulnerable enough to bring out the pure ballistic speed everyone wants this game to have. Fox didn't just uphold the 5th commandment, he reversed it. Unlike Meta Knight, who despite his best intentions, couldn't help but slow it down. He was just unapproachable. The laws of the world too cruel when he would attempt to push, and the reward for trying to put him in his place often being punishment. The incentive for the opponent was not to find their chance, but to sit and wait for the gates of opportunity to open. He just wasn't right for the world he was in. Too powerful to have other characters keep up, and not powerful enough to transform the game into what people wanted it to be. The Fox was a king who reflected and enhanced the desires of his people. Those who were drawn to Smash often do so in search of a quick, explosive game. He was a king who demanded that from those who were there. And what better is it than a king who embodies and emblazons the requests of the people? While his kingdom sees setback after setback, it seems almost immortal for the storms that it's weathered, its castles still standing today. This king, however, had failed to retain the morale of his people, and with that, the people lost interest. At times, he was the antithesis of what the people wanted, despite his best intentions, and as he failed to engage with his audience, his empire would soon come to dwindle. Some simply left, others crafted their own kingdom within Brawl, but as time marched forward, the kingdom would continue to dilapidate, until only the ruins of a game that once was remained. This is not an advertisement, but if you're a Smasher in the EU or just looking for somewhere to play Smash, I do have an event that I want you to know about. You might have noticed that I was using a Go to Fate tag in a lot of the footage, and I specifically mean a UK tournament between July the 14th and the 16th. Fate is the big UK and EU major that we have that to me is kind of like the perfect tournament. If you want to be a tryhard, you definitely can. It's a 24-hour venue and 100 something setups, but if you're like me and just want to have a good time, it's right by the beach. There's a couple of bars on site, and you also have on-site accommodation as a part of your venue fee. So, you're bound to meet new people and make a couple of friends that you'll see constantly throughout the weekend. This year it's also not just Melee, we have Ultimate, Mario Kart Wii, Lethal League Blaze, there's tons of stuff. Maybe even the game that Nintendo doesn't want you to know about, I'm trying to keep this short enough so that you know this isn't an ad read, but if you're in Europe and have a chance, I highly recommend that you at the very least give this tournament a look. Keep in mind that it is 18 plus because of the on-site bars, so drink responsibly, be sensible, and for the love of God, know your limits. It's basically like a weekend holiday and a tournament wrapped up into one. Trust me, it's gonna be sick, and if you don't go, at the very least, I'm going. That's all I wanted to say. Please consider giving it a look. It's my favorite tournament of the year, so, you know, yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. Thank you for watching, and if you're a Melee player or a Brawl player that wants to tap into the very large wall of nuance that got left out here, please do. This topic of healthy top tiers and this specific comparison is a whole rabbit hole that this video hardly even scratches the surface of. Also, Fox's arm has been clipping through his sleeve the whole video,